Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast. This is a lovely occasion for me as I've begun to have part twos with a number of my favorite coaches that I've spoken with. And I got to tell you, it's a fantastic thing. It's just selfishly, greedily, it's awesome that I get to do this and get to revisit with some of my favorite coaches and talk about what's new and what's hot and what's interesting to talk about. Anyway, I am extremely pleased to have Todd Sullivan back with me. You may remember that Todd is a Christian husband, dad, athlete, coach, and a 30-year veteran of the United States Navy. He's held positions in corporate HR, been CEO of a startup, currently co-owns a CrossFit gym and his own coaching business, which obviously we're here to talk about today. Todd is an avid reader and first and foremost loves spending time with his lovely wife, Amy. And as we just discussed, his kids and grandchildren. Now, if you see a picture of Todd, you might be a little shocked to hear the word grand there. But it's lovely and he is so happy about it. And we got to talk about it a little bit offline, and I'm sure we'll celebrate new life and expanding family a little bit here in our conversation. Todd, that's a longer intro than I planned, but I'm just really excited to see you and have you back on the show.
Kevin, thanks. I love our conversations and how natural they flow. And, just this friendship that we've already started developing and are continually growing.
It really does. It does feel like that, doesn't it? I mean, I know we've only interacted quote unquote professionally, but and a lot of times when we think of like the lines between personal and professional blurring, that's usually positioned as a negative. Honestly, I should only speak personally, but with my interactions with the coaching business, that blurred line is an absolute positive. It is a 100% win precisely because coaching is so much about channeling the personal and the professional together and connecting in deep and meaningful ways that manifest into every aspect of life. And so, yeah, I guess if you had told me maybe a year ago that these would be friendships I'd be developing for a podcast, I might not have believed you, but it comes as no surprise now, especially having gotten to know you a little bit. So yeah, happy to be friends and colleagues and sharing a podcast together today.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Let's talk. Actually, we're talking a little bit about a particular, I don't want to call it a plateau, but there's a particular transition. That's probably a better word. When it comes to leadership, especially in the corporate realm, but this could apply to all sorts of other areas. But we started talking about it in the corporate realm, where you've got people who have amazing technical skill developed over years. They're excellent at all of their previous jobs. And at a certain point, they begin to get promoted into positions that do rely somewhat on their technical abilities and skills and experience, but also require more leadership skills. And at a certain point, a person, without any assistance, and this is where coaching comes in, without any assistance, that person will be promoted into a job based on how well they performed at their previous job. And the distance between the skills that they've acquired and the skills that they need to continue to move forward and to lead themselves and their team begins to change a little bit. And I feel like that's where coaching and particularly your coaching can come in. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And, and I get it. We see people that are really good. They're technical. They understand the work. And so we promote them into, leading a team. And so often we forget that technical is great, but having those leadership, those people skills, that ability to talk and listen and to discern and to guide and to coach, those are a different set of skills. And frequently we see we'll even see the loss of really good quality people because we promote them, but we don't equip them. And so they go from being the best at what they do to mediocre oftentimes or worse at leading a team of people who are really good at what they've done also. And so I think that approach of not only do we need them to be technically savvy and good, although I'll tell you, I think a really good leader doesn't have to be the best technician. A really good coach doesn't have to know that industry. We need to spend the time in investing in their people and their leadership skills, which aren't always inherent to everyone.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like it feels both a little bit careless and maybe even a little bit lazy when it comes to like the people who own and operate and run CEOs, the top executives, where they just expect someone to have these leadership attributes naturally, like that somehow it's something inborn. And I've certainly met people who in my life, they've got it. Like they have an understanding and an ability and a charisma and an empathy that just makes them, I guess the phrase is born leaders. There's a reason that phrase exists. They do exist. But I think that can be an excuse not to develop leadership the way that we know it can be now. We've come far enough along that we do understand that this can be taught. You can be taught, no matter how introverted you might seem, or whether it maybe you have a speech impediment that you struggle with or did struggle with in the past, perhaps like shyness, like whatever kind of human you happen to be. Leadership skills can to a large degree be taught. Now, you might never be one of those dynamic, quote unquote, born leaders that's just dripping charisma, but that's not exactly really what leadership is it? Not really. I mean, it can certainly help.
You don't have to have a stage with 10,000 people to talk about something to be a great leader. I've seen several just outstanding leaders that if you tell them they have to get up constantly in front of a lot of people, you're not going to get your best out of them. But if you allow them to develop relationships and understanding and knowing, and they have the ability to communicate really well on a small group or a one-on-one level, and all of a sudden people feel what they are bringing and what they are eliciting and what they are hoping and dreaming for their teams, those people are going to make huge impacts, and they're going to make it in a small group or a one-on-one setting. And it may take a little bit more time, but they're going to do it, and they're going to be effective, and you're going to have a following for them.
Mm-hmm. And I think something that I know it's helped a number of people, myself included, is as you become more and more technically skilled at whatever it is you're technically skilled at, it's important to remember that there was a point at which you sucked at it. No matter how good you started, at that point, compared to where you got to very shortly thereafter, you stunk at that thing that you're now very, very good at. And I think it's important, it's a small but very significant, very profound pivot to realize that leadership and connection and vulnerability and empathy are just like that. When you start taking it seriously and you decide you want to get good at it, you're gonna suck at it for a little while, and that's okay. And in fact, it's more than okay. I undersold that. It's actually a feature, not a bug, because not being okay at leadership and connection and vulnerability is actually very, very important to developing leadership. Because you basically let people see you not be the best at something that you're committed to becoming better at. That by itself is so inspiring. That already is leadership, I think.
Yeah. So I want to tell just a quick little story on that. So back in 1998, I'm several hundred feet below the surface of the ocean on a submarine, and a message comes out that Chief Petty Officer Sullivan gets selected for a commission. And so, my department head and my commanding officer wake me up at like 1 a.m. to tell me. Mm-hmm. And, I'm groggy and all that. And I'm excited. I go back to sleep. And the next day, my boss, who had commissioned through the same way, who had my same job when he was enlisted, said, "Todd, you're the very best submarine storekeeper I've ever met and worked with." And I'm like, "Thanks." He's like, "You suck at delegating." And to be an officer and to have all this added responsibility, you've got to get good at that. And this really long conversation that I'll tell you about sometime kind of ensued, but I realized, like, he's right. And so I went through the process of teaching and educating and training a junior in my division, to delegating, to empowering decision-making over the course of weeks. In this controlled lab of a submarine, right? Mm-hmm. And got really good at the things that I was told, and confirmed by the senior enlisted on the boat. Because when I told him what he said, he's like, "Yeah, you do suck at delegating." And so he's like, "You're a perfectionist." But all of those things help develop my leadership and my ability to invest in others. Mm-hmm. And to grow my relief, and to realize that by me being good and having a way to do it isn't everybody's best way of being good and having a great way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that aperture widening that day was a catalyst of me getting to where I got to in my career.
I love the way you describe that aperture opening, because it really does. It's like you didn't realize it, but you were moving through your life with blinders on, and all of a sudden, like, your peripheral gets activated and you see things so differently, but it's all still the same. It's the same as it was. You just see it differently now, and also see the role you can play differently and more dynamically. And that, man, I throw this word around a little bit, maybe too casually, but that's just magical. It really is.
Well, and it made me not only a better leader, but by seeing how others were going to do the jobs that I might tell them how to do, really showed me that. And I use this equation. So the number 9, there's many ways mathematically to get to 9. You might think, 5 + 4 is the best way. I might think 3 × 3 is the best way. But if we both get to 9, we can see that there's a lot of really good ways to do something and not be stifled.
I think that might be the name of this episode, Getting to 9. It's a really elegant way to capture so much about what is great about coaching and leadership development, and what the results end up being, and why those results are important, and how other people can get to them. Yeah, I love that. Getting to 9. That's beautiful. That actually could be a decent book title, to be honest.
And it's funny because I've used that mathematical equation anytime I talk about expanding our ability to pour into others and delegate and empower decision making. It's not always our way.
Yeah.
And there's weirdos that do like 13 - 4 is their favorite way to get to 9, right? So, but we have to embrace that.
Beautiful weirdos. I have many beautiful weirdos in my life who,
yes,
I do not understand why they do things the way they do them, but I am in love with the way they do the things that they do, and I benefit greatly from that. And I just hope that they get as much weird beauty out of my own ways of doing things as I get from theirs.
and taking it back to coaching, when you're talking with somebody that is set in their 3 × 3, keeping with this, and all of a sudden their senses realize that I don't have to do it the exact same way every time, because life isn't the exact same way every time. And if I expand my ability to do things, I can meet the best way to do it for the situation every time, not trudge through the exact same steps every time and hope that I get the best situation.
I'll share a little tiny story of my own. This is a very, very, very tiny personal habit that I just kind of stumbled on and didn't really realize it was a habit or anything that would be of value to me until I really kind of sat with it, reflected on it, even though I was benefiting from it in ways I didn't really understand and I'm still learning about. I have always, for most of my adult life, loved to go on walks. When I was a kid, I would go on walks. It'd be more like bike rides. I'd hop on my little BMX bike and just be out in the neighborhood all day until the sun went down and then come home for dinner, back in the good old days. I'm in my mid-40s, so I remember what that was like. My entire adult life, I've always loved just going out for walks. And this is like parks, nature, neighborhoods, even like urban walks. I just loved being out and in nature, amongst people, in the built world, in the natural world, everything. I love it. And I would, develop these routes that I would get really familiar with, that I knew how long it took. So if I wanted to like squeeze walk in, like I know I need some time, I would have this particular route. It's like, okay, I know how long that takes. I'll be back home in time to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And so I've just been going through my life. And then there would come these moments where I would just go a different way for some other reason. And I would walk down the exact same street, going the exact same direction, but just on the other side. It was just on the other side of the street. And I would catch myself and be like, wait, what street am I on? I would just be, and I'd look over, it's like, oh, there's that house, there's that mailbox, there's that bush, there's that tree, there's that dog. And I would become conscious of the fact that, oh, I'm in a very familiar place, but I'm coming from just like 1 degree off difference. And it sparked my consciousness. I became more aware of my surroundings, started going down the same streets in a different direction, getting the same kind of like, oh, seeing things I had never seen before. It's like, I had no idea that house had this beautiful shed alongside of it that's like painted this beautiful color. And look at that classic car. I'd never seen that before. That is gorgeous. This person clearly cares. And all these things jumping out. Different times of day, different animals are out in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. Different people are out at the morning, afternoon, at night. The light comes through the trees differently. Obviously, I'm belaboring the point a little bit, but you get my drift. It's like so much was there that I just wasn't seeing. And it doesn't necessarily, well, actually, I'm going to say this both ways. It's not necessarily these tiny little moments. They're not life-changing. I didn't have like this starburst epiphany and all of a sudden I see things differently about everything in life. But that's actually kind of what happens cumulatively, because I have a commitment and a grown habit that I maintain to, even in my most well-worn paths, just walking it differently sometimes, knowing that something different is going to emerge. And that might not be something that changes my life or even changes that habit or even really changes anything in any way. I'll just be that sliver more aware of where I am, what I'm doing, and my existence. And that habit it's the tiniest little habit, but it has had such a profound effect on the way that I think about my relationships, like doing things differently with people, saying something differently to them, listening to them in a different way. And it has this, again, just like leadership, it has this beautiful cascading effect where I benefit maybe the least of everyone, because me seeing someone or something or some place or seeing in some way differently allows me to interact differently and maybe show something new to someone else that they can then see things differently. And it's this beautiful virtuous cycle. And, you know, I also get to meet different cats and different dogs on different days on different streets sometimes. So it's delightful. I love it. I love it.
And, you know, when you think about just the change of the view, the 1 degree off, how many times have you had a coaching conversation where by changing, you know, maybe not getting different things done, but doing them differently or doing them in a different order or stacking your day differently, has been the breakthrough that somebody has needed, because they were in a rut and they had this, you know, they stopped thinking because it was all so repetitive. Yep. And they asked the exact same question. You know, I read a book recently, and, you know, there was so much cool things in there about human action, but it was about don't ask the same opener. Right? So don't just say, how are you today? Say, hey, you know, your glasses, or you know, or whatever it is that's different, or, you know, what has happened so far that has made this a great Thursday? You know, just anything that makes people answer differently instead of the exact same answer that you don't listen to and you keep going by. And so I think anytime that we can do those little things that change the conversation, that change how we approach things, gives us a little bit of growth. Yeah. And better communication and relation with the other person.
Absolutely. It's really sometimes just that tiny difference, just for difference sake, can make all the difference. It can just unlock things in a way that you couldn't have seen. And that's the thing that I love about it too. It's like sometimes you just do it. You don't have to have a full and complete understanding of all the effects of the thing that you're about to say, that you're about to do. You just have to have an understanding that sometimes just a tiny difference can interrupt those patterns, help you or someone else see things in a way they hadn't seen it before. And that could just be the key to unlocking some door that's been closed for years, or maybe for someone's entire life. And sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes you just have to try the key, jiggle it and see if it works.
Yeah. That's a great visual for somebody to think about too, right? So, because let's face it, most of us, you know, like if we can kind of picture something, it helps that new concept, you know, take hold a lot better.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I just looked up at the clock. We've already been chatting online and off for about 30 minutes, so I should probably let you go. But I'm telling you right now, we're gonna do this again. I just love talking to you online and offline. So I'm gonna check out some of your grandkids, your fresh new grandbabies pictures. I'm delighted to see that. I'm also delighted to see that you shared that on LinkedIn too. And that's one thing I was going to say before we started recording, but I'll also go ahead and shoot it in here now. I love how LinkedIn is still very professional. It's still very much for professional networking, but it's also it's also really grown as a relationship building platform. in a way that applies to both personal and professional, in a way that doesn't, like, again, it blurs the line in a positive way between the personal and professional and allows real depth of connection and meaning to pass between people and groups in a way that's still very organized and very healthy, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things, and that was the first real personal thing I ever shared. And people want to do business with people they like and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And if we only let them see us in a button down and sitting rigid and with my notebook in front of me, they see the business aspect, and that might help the trust but man, when they can relate to you taking some time off of LinkedIn and emails and text because you're doing something that is monumentally important to you as a person, like meeting a brand new grandchild and spending time with a 2-year-old grandchild, they're like, okay, he's a real person. Like he has things that are bigger than coaching, and coaching is hugely important to me, but man, that legacy and spending time and quality time and with my kids and grandkids, that's up there.
Yeah, that's at the tippy top. And you're also, you still happen to be modeling the kind of personal family leadership and vulnerability and availability and prioritization that you want to instill in your clients. So it really, like, again, like I said, it's like normally blurred lines are a bad thing. I think in this case, it's less of a blurred line and more, it's actually just more clarity, really. Having the blended line is better than blurred. I think
blended. I think that's
like
a great way of describing it. I like that.
I like that. Yeah, I think I might have to write a little post about that.
Yeah. Unless you copyright that, I'm going to borrow that one too.
Everything is, in my opinion, things like that are always bigger and better shared. All right, Todd, thank you so much for being on the pod today. We'll talk again soon, here, there, and everywhere. Just thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. I appreciate you spending this time with me.